Hey folks, John Thompson, Spring Framework Guru here. So today I'm going to explain through a problem that one of my students had. I have a Spring Core course and talking about dependency injection using the Spring Framework of version 4 of the Spring Framework. And I was showing the students how to use dependency injection and setter-based injection. There are two different types of styles of injection you can use with the Spring Framework, and both of them work really well. And my student didn't quite understand how the Spring was determining what bean to pick up, and he asked, well, what if I create another bean for injection? And he thought he might get two messages, but he actually is getting a duplicate bean error. And what's happening is Spring under the covers is going to, by default, auto-wire by type. You do have more control over this, and he added in another hello world bean. And when we did that, he had two beans of the same type and no qualifier on those beans as to how Spring should treat one over the other. So it threw out an error saying, hey, you gave me two beans of this type. I don't know which one to use. And that's why it threw out an exception. So I'm going to step you through the same code that we were using in the course, and I'll show you what we were doing. And I'm going to introduce a second bean there, and then we'll step through the error, and I'll show you how to resolve it. Actually, I'll show you two different ways how to resolve it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the code now. Okay, so here's the little application. This is a Spring Boot application, and we are bringing in two services. I have an injected by constructor service and a setter-based service. And these two services, let me show you real quick here. These are Spring components, and they both are auto-wired. They're taking in a hello world service. So this is being auto-wired by type. And so one is being auto-wired by the constructor, and the other is being auto-wired by the setter. So I just wanted to show in this lesson of my course how to auto-wire by either constructor or a setter. Both will work equally as well. I'm going to go back over here. And now I'm going to run this and show you how we can run this and get output. So the Spring Boot starting up, and I get a hello world message. And this is from my implementation of the service. So as I said, a good coding practice is you want to implement a service to an interface. So now I have the interface that just takes a method, say hello. And here's my implementation, hello world impl, and it says hello, and it outputs hello world, which is why we're getting that. And we haven't made any distinction between the two beans, so Spring is going to inject both of those into the constructor-based service and the setter-based service. Now, what my student did is he went in and created a hello world implementation 2, and I'm going to uncomment this out so you can see the error. Now, I'm going to run this again. Now you can see that I get the exception, and it's saying a non-unique bean definition exception, no qualifying type of bean. So that there's two ways I can do this. One, I can come in here and annotate this as primary, which is a very simple way. And now we can see that bean has been picked up, but the other bean's being ignored. So what if I want one bean or the other one injected? So what we can do is Spring also does an auto-wire by name too, and the name is just the bean name with a lowercase. So I can say here at qualifier and give Spring a hint that I want 2 to come in here to my setter-based service. Now, Spring won't know which one to wire in here because I took away the primary. And now I can also say here, and you can see IntelliJ is giving me a warning here. And if I go over, qualifier is not applicable to a constructor. So easy way around this is something I just learned, because I don't normally use constructor-based injection. We can move that down to the method of the constructor and put them right in front of the property that we want. Now let's go ahead and run this in Spring, and I'll show you how Spring will come up, and we'll get both different beans in there. So now I have my hello world, and then my hello world 2, which throws out deuces wild, the other bean. So what's happening here is we have one bean being wired into the constructor service and another bean being wired into the setter base service, and we're using Spring annotations. We're using the qualifier annotation to tell Spring that we want different implementations of the bean to be wired into the different services. In the Spring framework, you do have a lot of control as to how beans are going to get wired and injected in your classes. So there's a lot of different options, a lot of different tools you can use, and I just showed you 2 of them. So the first one, we had 2 beans of the same type. Now, if you don't have that situation, by default, Spring is going to auto-wire by type. So if you just have one type, everything's happy, that one bean gets injected, boom, you're good. But there are times where you do have multiple instances of that, and you need some way to distinguish that. So an easy way is to use the @primary annotation, and that will give one of those beans a higher precedence of getting injected, but you may need more granular control over that, and that's where the qualifier annotation comes in, and that allows you to give Spring a really strong hint as to which bean you want to use. So you saw in this example, when I used the primary bean, both of my service beans got injected with the one instance of the bean, but by using the qualifier, I was able to say, hey, I want this service to get this bean, I want this service to get this bean. So obviously a lot of control. So Spring is managing those beans for us, and we are telling Spring how we want it to configure our application for us.